It is Thursday, August the 29th, 1935. The sky is blue and only a few clouds can be seen on this last day of the holiday. Ideal for a leisurely drive around Lake Lucerne. At 9:19 a.m, the 8 cylinders of a new Packard convertible with elegant white-wall tyres and Belgian license plates purr on the lake route between Merlischokken and Kusnacht. The passenger has the road map on her lap and points out scenic landmarks along the route. As quickly as such things happen, the driver is briefly distracted. The Packard veers over to the right, hits the curb, and in an attempt to correct the vehicle, the driver accelerates, which only makes the situation worse, causing the luxury automobile to veer straight into a pear tree. The passenger tries to quickly spring out of the car, but then it ricochets off into a second tree. Both occupants are thrown from the car. Finally, the Packard rolls to a stop in the reeds of the lake. The woman's body lies lifeless on the bank. The driver of the car, also injured, runs to her and takes her in his arms. He kisses her, talks to her, kisses her again and again, without her responding with any sign of life. There is another man in the back seat of the damaged vehicle, dressed in the uniform of a chauffeur. He has suffered severe leg injuries and has to be carried out by rescuers. The accident scene attracts lots of curious onlookers. When the man in the chauffeur's uniform is asked by a police officer newly arrived as to who was driving, the injured chauffeur explains that it wasn't him. The noble-looking gentleman who has given up trying to bring his companion back to life refuses to provide information. During the search of the wrecked car, police found 2 Belgian diplomatic passports in the name of Louis Lambert and his wife, an industrialist from Brussels, and a membership card for the Swiss Alpine Club at Pilatus, made out to the Comte de Rete. After inquiries, the police learned that neither the industrialist, Lambert, nor the Count were involved in the accident. The unhelpful man responsible is Leopold III, King of Belgium, and the dead woman is Astrid, Queen of Belgium. He manages to escape with just a few cuts and grazes and minor concussion, but the tragic Astrid lying on the lake bank has succumbed to severe head injuries. News of the fatal accident travels quickly across Europe. Queen Astrid, known as the young, unsophisticated beauty from the north, is dead. The Queen of Hearts, as she was called by her adoring subjects. The people of Belgium remember her as the loving mother of 3 small children, Charlotte, Baudouin, and Albert. She was always openly and unabashedly affectionate to her husband. Such a tragedy was obviously big news for the press. As with Lady Diana much later, a whole country and the nation's tabloids mourn her death. Astrid was not even 30 and already an icon, because she had married the Belgian heir to the throne, in a marriage that was sealed with love rather than arranged. The press are having a field day, as more and more photos find their way into the newspapers. All over the world, newspaper headlines announce the tragic death of the young queen. The Schweizer Illustrator is quoted, "All of a sudden, fate tears the fabric in two and transforms blessed joy into bitter suffering. A dead queen and a spiritually broken husband is returning to Lucerne." Belgian Prime Minister Paul van Zeeland also speaks emotionally to the public on the radio.
Is there a house in Belgium where no tears, no real tears that sting your eyes, have been shed for them?
Pictures of the late Queen are sold in large quantities, and a stamp is circulated with a black mourning border. Almost 22 million are sold. Within a few hours, the scene of the tragedy is overrun by onlookers. Even passenger-laden coaches start arriving with its human cargo spilling out to see where the young queen met her end. Thousands of people have turned the immediate area into a carnival of sorts. Souvenir hunters pull out blades of grass with splashes of blood on them. Others desperately looking for torn off parts of the Packard, and even some removing strips of bark from the pear tree. The slope on Lake Lucerne is transformed into a hill of flowers with all the wreaths and condolences. This spectacle, of course, does not amuse the locals. Swiss celebrities who wouldn't normally be fans of Belgian monarchy pay their respects on site and leave their visiting cards. These include the painter Kuno Amiet, the private banker Hermann Wegelin, General Henri Guisan, and even the Swiss foreign minister Giuseppe Motta. On a ribbon around a bouquet of gladioli it says, "The dear Belgian royal mother from a simple Swiss mother." At the exact spot where Queen Astrid lost her life, someone has hammered a small wooden cross into the ground. The Queen's coffin has already been transferred to Villa Haslihorn in St. Niklausen, where the royal family spent their holidays. In the evening a special train to Brussels leaves the Lucerne freight yard with her remains. A sleeping car is added to the locomotive, followed by a simple black-lined baggage car with the flower-wreathed coffin. Only 2 or 3 train lights cast a weak glow. High Swiss military, diplomats and Belgian dignitaries travel with the mourners. At 10:15 p.m. the special funeral train departs the city of Lucerne. This scene is reminiscent of the equally dramatic events following the violent death of Empress Elizabeth in Geneva in 1898. The flags at the Federal Palace and along the railway line are all at half-mast, and thousands of Swiss people gather at the stations to see the special train and pay their last respects to Astrid. Queen Astrid was born Astrid Sophia Lovisa Thyra, and daughter of Princess Ingeborg and Prince Karl, the brother of the Swedish king. At the age of 19 she married the Belgian heir to the throne, Leopold III. In 1934 the two became the youngest royal couple in Europe, and some say the most beautiful. This romantic image was helped along with retouched photographs to heighten their attractive qualities. Astrid quickly became a European myth and a top seller for the then emerging tabloid press, which can only be compared with today's publicity surrounding the British royal family. The fact that the Queen's death created so much publicity has a lot to do with what happened at the scene of the accident. One of the onlookers at the accident site was Willy Rogg, a 25-year-old dentistry student. His father worked as a clerk for the district in Kusnacht, and he happened to hear of a car accident involving high-ranking people. He called his son and told him to get quickly to the scene of the accident with his camera. Willy immediately cycled there and sees the woman lying motionless. Knowing some medical procedures, he checks her pulse just in case, but her heart has already stopped beating. Then he remembers his father's assignment and takes 6 photos. They show the destroyed car, the scene of the accident, and the moment when the Queen's corpse was placed in a coffin. Rogg hurriedly pedals to a nearby town to have the photos developed. He then hands the photos to a reporter from the Swiss photo agency Photo Press, but the latter cannot reach his boss and cannot decide what he should do with the images. When a journalist from the Associated Press telegrams Rogg, Rogg sees a chance to make big money. He sells his exclusive pictures for 100 francs each, jumps in a taxi on AP's expense account and takes the fastest route to Dubendorf Airport. After the Associated Press photo agency in London guaranteed purchase of the photos, a plane was hired for 5,000 francs. There is a problem. It's already dark. Should Swissair dare the first night flight in its history just for a handful of photos? Because pilots at this time flew their planes mostly by sight and relying on landmarks, such flights were out of the question. But one man takes up the dare, the legendary and popular Walter Mittelholzer, technical director of Swissair, which was founded in 1931. Celebrity photos like that of Astrid's accident appeal to Mittelholzer, who is a shrewd and successful media entrepreneur. He liked to meet celebrities from business, politics and show business. Because he was more of a manager and a PA expert than a pilot, the night flight is not something he wishes to attempt himself, despite his Alpine and African flights. That is why he asks the experienced pilot Robert Gazelle on board 5 minutes before takeoff. Gazelle, probably the better pilot than Mittelholzer, is a world record holder in endurance flying, senior expert and ETH lecturer in aviation. He finds it a little strange to start a Douglas DC-2, a machine with 14 seats, for the sake of a few photos. Nevertheless, Mittelholzer and Gazelle take off with the Douglas Express plane at 9:35 p.m. from Zurich-Dubendorf. The flight was no walk in the park. The two men no longer know how far they've already flown. Because of cloud covering, nothing can be seen from the ground. Despite the summer night, it is bitterly cold. Ice has formed on the propellers at an altitude of 4,500 meters, and the cabin windows are frozen over. Suddenly, freezing rain pelts on the fuselage, as loud as if it were dropping pebbles from the sky. Gazelle increases the speed of the propellers so that the ice is thrown off. The flight is not something they wish to repeat. But to the relief of the pilots, the clouds are gradually disappearing, and the view below shows the English Channel, and behind it the beacons of navigation. They wipe the sweat from their brows when the lights of London Airport suddenly come into view. A few seconds after landing, a messenger snatches the valuable photos from the pilots and speeds away on a motorbike. Because the Associated Press news agency in London are using the latest technology, the images are converted into sounds and transmitted wirelessly, and so, in the space of a short time, the photos of the dead young Queen reach the editorial offices all over the world during the night, and are already causing their readership to gasp as they read of the tragedy over their early morning tea. Meanwhile, Willy Rogge, the amateur press photographer, received a call from the Belgian Foreign Minister Paul-Henri Spaak. He expressly asked the young Swiss not to allow publication of the photos. "Je regrette," said Rogge. "The images are already in London." But he assured him they wouldn't show close-ups and, in his opinion, were by no means sensational. The authorities in Küsnacht are also continuing to investigate the accident with the necessary Swiss precision. The Packard convertible is also examined in detail. Everything was in perfect condition, including the brakes. Garage owner Urban Müllermann-Tresch, who is storing the wrecked car, is fully aware of the value of the damaged vehicle. Of course he allows journalists and photographers to take a peek, and only for a fee of 30 cents. The Belgian press promptly complains about the disrespectful businessman, and the Swiss Foreign Ministry has to take a diplomatic position regarding the deplorable behavior of the garage owner, and they manage to smooth things over. Shortly after the accident, the Swiss authorities realized that the scene of the tragedy could be developed into a memorial, not only for Belgians, but also monarchy fans from all countries. The Swiss Confederation wants to buy the 2 lots of privately owned land. One owner sells at the then customary price of 18 francs per square meter. The other smells a deal and demands 50 francs, and in return the Federal Council quickly expropriates him. The Confederation hands over the accident site to the people and the Crown of Belgium. Just 1 year after the accident, the Astrid Chapel is already erected at the memorial site. It was designed by the Belgian architect Paul Room and built by the local construction company Gambaro. incidentally entirely from Belgian granite. Astrid is revered as a selfless martyr in a triptych glass painting. Her now almost saintly status would later become her husband's undoing. Leopold III, the widowed king and the person responsible for the accident, is far from being over the death of his wife. He forbids his 3 children to ever talk about their mother. He leaves their room at Laeken Castle untouched, and even keeps her blood-smeared skirt. So it is not surprising that Leopold does not attend the opening of the memorial chapel, a place that is already etched in his memory. Instead, he organizes for a wreath to be laid. Switzerland, however, will be of great importance to him later. In 1940, Belgium surrenders to Nazi Germany. Unlike the Belgian government or the monarchs of Norway and Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, who have maintained the resistance from exile, Leopold allows himself to be taken prisoner. Such behaviour many Belgians interpret as treason and cowardice. He is placed under house arrest in his castle. As Leopold III also visited Adolf Hitler on the Obersalzberg in Berchtesgaden, he lost further sympathy with his people. The mood against Leopold darkens further when he marries the pregnant Lillian Bales in 1941. While the population is suffering from the German occupation, the king celebrates his wedding with pomp and lights. There is outrage when the public learns that Adolf Hitler sent the couple a congratulatory telegram with flowers for their wedding. Lillian Bales is also a bourgeois, the daughter of an industrialist collaborating with the Nazis, and dresses extravagantly, which is also not at all well received in Belgium. She does not call herself Queen, but only Princess Lilian of Belgium, and attempts to win over the Belgian people by waiving all royal claims for herself and her descendants. Nevertheless, Leopold's marriage is interpreted as an evil betrayal of the unforgettable Queen Astrid. The heartbreaking image of the grieving widower comforting his 3 sad children is long gone. "Funny, funny, let's get married" is one of the satirical newspaper headlines, and reflects the mood in Belgium. Leopold's popularity is then in freefall. The angry mood in Belgium is clearly directed against Leopold, because he is also opposing the resolutions of the Belgian government in exile. The parliament in Brussels officially declares him unable to govern. Instead, Leopold's brother Karl becomes Prince Regent of Belgium. Leopold was left with nothing more than the path into exile. He chose Switzerland, namely the small village of Pregny-Chambézy, a suburb of Geneva. There he lived with his new wife and children from his first and second marriage on the stately estate of Les Reposoirs. The exiled Leopold III requested that the elegant 8-cylinder convertible Packard, the accident car from Küsnacht am Rigi, be taken out and sunk at the deepest point of Lake Lucerne. There, at the level of Megenhorn Castle, the wreck is still 200 meters below the surface. It remains there to this day. Very few people know where the historical vehicle is located, and they are not telling. Well, my dear friends, I hope you enjoyed that story. I found that on a Swiss site. totally by accident. I was looking for other stuff, and I thought that's a story that's definitely worth telling. I love that sort of mystery where there's sunken things, sunken ships and sunken cars, and a tragedy involved. Has all the perfect ingredients. I hope you think so too. Where the accident scene was, Odette and I have travelled along that route quite a few times. Never knew about it, of course, and so never was looking for it. But next time we travel along that route, we'll most definitely stop and make a video for you guys. I'm curious now. When I mentioned this story to my local mechanic, he actually knew about it and said that a friend of his wanted to organize a dive to find the car, and wanted him also to be in on it and to finance it. He declined. I think there's quite a few people are interested in finding that car. The government doesn't want it to be found, but I'm going to show you something in a minute where there was an announcement about it for a TV program and nothing afterwards. We'll have a look at that now. So here's the article here. It says divers find the car from the Belgium Queen Astrid. It says there in the Vierwaldstätter See, which is the lake where they sunk the ship. Divers found the wrecked car from the Belgium Queen Astrid. Says there, as we know, she died by the car accident in Kusnacht on Rigi, and because of the wishes of her husband, who was driving the car, they sunk it into that spot, the deeper spot in the Vierwaldstätter See. Now, this in the middle of May, there was German treasure searchers. His name, Klaus Kepler. He's searching for treasure. He has found it. It was geortet. They found where it was. And it says a team of the TV program from Pro 7 will be also there for the dive. And it says they're going to be sort of opening pictures of it on 24th of August. And this article, does it say when? There is no date for the article, but I think it's quite an old one. There's no other information. That is it. Okay, here we go. That was 20 years ago, that article. January the 1st, 2000 was when that article, and I looked, and there's no evidence that that program ever went to air. So I can only think that someone stopped them from going to air with it because they didn't want to encourage other divers, and they didn't want the actual wreck location to be open to the public. So there you go. And I've looked around. There's no other evidence that anyone has been down there to find that, to film that car or to make photos of it. I would love to find out about it, but the Swiss are very secretive, and if they want to keep a secret, they will. But I do know that some have found it. They're probably not allowed to release the photos, but they have been down there. I know that for a fact. Poor old Astrid, enjoying a nice summer drive, and then suddenly flung out of the car to instant death. And typical of the aristocracy to not be forthcoming with information, thinking that they are above the law. And thank goodness the driver stuck up for himself and didn't allow anyone to make him take the blame for it. Yeah, the truth will out. And you know what? If I had sort of property along that shore, I certainly wouldn't. It would have looked a lot different then as it does now. A lot quieter as well. Not that much traffic. Not that many people had cars. But I really wouldn't want to sell my property, and I certainly wouldn't want to be forced to give it up. But there you go. There's a rule for them and a rule for us. So there was two people who owned those plots of land, and one was being a good Swiss citizen and agreed to sell, at the market price, and the other one, quite rightly, wanted a bit more. And why should he be forced anyway to give up the land? And so they just take it off him. It's absolutely outrageous. They just take it off you. If that had belonged to his family for generations and he had a house on that bit of land and didn't want to sell it, they just take it off you. I don't think it's right. There you go. There's many injustices in the world, and it seems to be that the rich have privileges and we just have to pay taxes. I better get off that subject, or they might demonetize this by the time it comes to YouTube. That was probably enough to make it not suitable for, for advertising. Yeah. Anyway, but what a beautiful location. Isn't it gorgeous there? So serene and tranquil looking. By the way, this is where all the rich Swiss people live, along this area. Kusnacht. So all the richies, you know. I can't afford to live there. Yeah, it's lovely, of course. Anywhere where there's a lake location, it's the higher rents, and the rich properties are all around that. Yeah. Yep, the rich always get the best spots, don't they? Well, you can't blame them. If I had enough money, I would like to live. I wouldn't like to live because they all sort of crowd around there. I want to live in a forest or something. Get away from them. I think I better come to the end of this blah blah. Well, my dear friends, looking forward to meeting you again all next time, and check out the latest merch that I've got before I head off. Wishing you all the very best, and until next time, God bless and bye-bye. Just one last addendum before I go. Just wanted to show you a Swiss ashtray. It's of a Douglas DC6. Here we have it here, and this one is actually in really nearly perfect condition. Most of them have either damage to the propellers or the propellers are missing because they're very fragile. This one has all the propellers intact. About 10 years ago, there was a huge craze for these, for people to collect them, and I was offered several hundred for mine, but I decided not to sell it. I like it. I'm going to keep it for a while. Gives me joy. This was from an insurance director. He got it directly from Swiss Air as a company gift, and after he died, the family gave it to me. It was very kind of them. They knew my mother-in-law personally. None of the family members survive now. They're all gone, so I have this as a memory of them. It's a wonderful little souvenir, and I thought I would share it with you because it certainly has a connection to this story in a way, although it's a later Douglas. But still, it's a Swiss Air Douglas, and I thought you would like to see it. Simple as that. On that note, I will finally go. Goodbye, my friends.